at Studio C. This is your day-to-day BYU Sports play-by-play. I'm Spencer Linton. To my left sits Jarom Jordan, and to his left sits our first guest of the day, one of the stars of After Further Review, longtime play-by-play.
I thought he was the star. Is that
okay? Fine, he's
that's
the
what
star.
I was told.
He's the captain of After Further.
Wait a minute.
Dave McCann is with us on BYU Sports.
Thank you. I do what I can to bring those guys along.
Yeah.
You know, mostly I start the show and make sure it ends on time. And then those two guys talk the whole hour.
Are you the captain of the show? We were talking about the captains have been named for BYU Football. You're the captain of AFR?
I don't know. I'm the writer, co-creator. So, yes.
Then
yes,
I'd say you're the captain of the show.
I pretty much have an idea of what's next for the get the guys there. And I'm the facilitator. How about that?
There you go. You're the Matt Montague.
Are you a game manager, Dave?
Game manager.
Are you a game manager, or are you going to go win the game?
We're undefeated, that show, so we're pretty excited.
All right.
Yeah. You try and take care of the ball.
All right. We were just talking about the BYU depth chart that was released yesterday. We brought up all of our questions. We brought up what we think are the strengths.
What we don't believe.
Very many. Some things that we actually are not buying into. Specifically on the offensive line, we think there's going to be some more shuffling there. What's your number one takeaway from the BYU football depth chart?
I don't even know if that's a legit depth chart.
Yeah, that's the thing.
South Florida hasn't released theirs, and the football office was like, well, we're not going to release one if they're not going to release one. And then this one popped out, and I'm looking at that going, gee, it looks a lot like the spring depth chart. I don't know how much validity I'm putting in that. All I know is everybody that we thought would be available to play in the spring is on this depth chart. So no one's lost for the season type stuff, and that's unique to get through, to be sitting through fall camp and not have lost somebody. Now their guys banged up and stuff, but so I looked at that depth chart and I go, one, it might just be, hey, does anyone have a depth chart? Let's just put that in the release. And two, everybody's there that needs to be there. So,
which is good, because we had questions walking into the beginning of fall camp. Hey, where's this guy and this guy and this guy? They're all there, which is awesome. When it comes to the offensive line, do you really care who's at what position? Because I think we're pretty confident about who's going to roll out there.
If you look at the watch list, half the lines going to the NFL no matter where they line up at the end of the season. So we know they're all good, and we know they have experience from last year. I don't care where they're at. Connor Pay is going to be at center, and if he's not, Tuku Afu's going to be at center. I think it'll be Pay, but they're both good. They both back each other up. But this screams depth, and that's been a theme through the camp. This is P5 depth that BYU has. If a corner gets hurt or a safety gets hurt, well, there's another one, as opposed to a return missionary. Now, there are a couple of young guys on there, but that secondary is full of guys that have been there and that are seniors. And so I just look at they're taking men back to South Florida as opposed to the boys they took back in 2019.
It was a young group.
That includes the quarterback.
Yeah, no, it was a young group, and that was Jaren Hall's first start, as you mentioned. BYU and this group, perhaps this is the deepest team in BYU. Well, maybe not deepest, but most experienced in BYU history. We have COVID to not thank for a lot of things, but we do thank COVID for this group that wouldn't like Gunnar Romney and Peyton Wilgar wouldn't be on this team if it wasn't.
Let's acknowledge COVID. We don't thank COVID. COVID jacked us all up.
Yes, it did.
Let's acknowledge that COVID did that, but it's done it for all the sports teams, and it's done it for South Florida too. And so they got a lot of transfers that have been able to just pop in, and we don't even know what they're going to do. We know what kind of offense they're going to do. They're coordinators from West Virginia, the receivers coach for 3 years. Does that mean they're going to come out and do the run and shoot, do the spread? They don't have the running quarterback they had last year who gave us fits, but they got another quarterback who's mobile enough that gave us some trouble at Baylor. So I agree with what Kalani said yesterday. He said, we're really not sure what they're going to do. But at least BYU's prepared with athletes on both sides of the ball to adjust and deal with whatever they do.
It's interesting because BYU did play South Florida last year, and you played that quarterback that transferred there. It's a really weird setup.
They didn't play BYU's quarterback.
Right.
Because Hall was out.
And they're like, well, the last time you came here, we went. It's like a weird setup for them.
As we're pointing out, there are so many unique layers to this game.
I love it.
Then there's the actual game and the conditions that we are anticipating in South Florida and all of the history that BYU has in Florida, and there hasn't been a ton of good history, but it's weighted because of who they've played and when they played
When
them.
you play a crappier team, it tends to go better.
But in 2019, it didn't. But again, to your point, Dave, this is a much more experienced, grown-up team than the 2019 BYU squad. But I just want to focus on the conditions. High of 91 degrees.
I don't know how you're going to do it.
Okay.
We're going to be here.
Dressed for
it's going to be
right
70
now.
degrees in our studio here. You'll be over in the the other swamp.
High of 91 degrees.
Nice.
Humidity is going to be off the charts because there are thunderstorms at a 60% chance expected on and off. So it's going to be muggy. It's going to be hot.
It might
BYU's
rain
got to go
during
to
the
2 time zones. There may be rain during the game. How do you feel that will impact the way this game is played? And I brought this up to Clark Barrington. We'll have that interview later this week, and I've talked to some of the coaches about this. They're trying to simulate what they can. I mean, but they're getting the footballs and dropping them in water, and I mean, they're doing all sorts of stuff to try and get difference. But how much do you think that will impact the way this game plays out, and how it will affect the 11.5-point line that BYU has right now as a favorite?
You know, if it's close, then I think it'll impact it. Much like when BYU went back to Virginia, and they had 2 delays because of the rain and lightning. It was hot, it was humid, it was wet. The football was, I don't know, however many pounds. And Taysom Hill threw a ball to Jamal Williams. It bounced off his shoulder pad. Virginia caught it, ran for a touchdown, won the game. That was late into the night after this long, hot, soggy, and it was whoever was going to make a mistake was the difference in that game. But if we're golfing and you're under par and it's a hot, humid day, you're having the time of your life. If you're ahead in these kind of games, as a fan and a broadcaster, it would seem obvious to me that you feel better, because in these other experiences we have, when things are tough but we're ahead, it's not as bad. If you're down and it's hot and it's humid and it's rainy, then I think it just compounds. So the key for BYU is to get ahead, because it's going to be hot and humid on South Florida too.
For sure.
And I don't know if you just get used to it. You know, hot is hot. Cold is cold. Cold weather teams, Wyoming, they were just as cold as the other team when we went out and played them. It was just a lousy, cold day, and whoever turned the ball over the least won the game. But I don't know how acclimated you can go, well, we're used to this. It's their first game, too. And so I think it'll affect each. But get the lead. Get the lead, and it's cooler.
Okay. And then mentally,
it's cooler mentally.
It's a cooling effect.
Absolutely.
BYU by 11.5, says Vegas. What do you think of that line?
I think BYU about a 2 touchdown in the end. I think South Florida's going to score. I think BYU's going to score. I think I kind of figured it'd be like 34-21.
Is that a preview of what you'll guess on the FYI?
That is a preview.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. Just a taste.
So watch.
Well,
Blaine and,
that's the actual answer, it sounds like.
Blaine and David are going to listen to that, and then they're going to pick like a point different from my pick.
Like $1 on the price.
Now that it's been revealed. But I think the key for Saturday is the same key that is really in every game, and it certainly showed up in the Utah game. Take care of the football, control the line of scrimmage, and minimize penalties. Last year they had 3 turnovers through the first 5 games. 1 Tyler Algier got back. The other was a kind of a Hail Mary in the end zone at the end of the half against Arizona State, and a fumble against Florida, while the defense went out and forced 10. So win the turnover battle, line of scrimmage. We've talked about this like the greatest offensive line ever assembled by man. There's more pressure on them than the defensive line, I can tell you that much, because the expectation is there. Control the line of scrimmage, and then don't get those 5-yard offsides or motion penalties or a late hit. And you would think with the experience that BYU has, they can avoid those penalties. They did that last year for the most part. That's the key to winning 10 games, and I know Ed might said it's not a big deal. It sure is a big deal, and he knows it, but he'd rather win 11, so that would be the focus, or 12. But I think that's the key in an opener. And we saw it last weekend. Teams that didn't take care of the ball,
it can get weird
onside kicks at weird times, just lose the games.
Nebraska.
And then it'll be the same key when they come back to play Baylor. Take care of the ball, control the line of scrimmage, and minimize penalties. Whichever team does that's going to win the game.
Dave McCann is with us on BYU Sports Nation, the captain of After Further Review. Now that you've revealed all the secrets of what's going to happen on AFR tonight, what else are you going to try and throw in there, Captain?
Let me tell you, so we got the A-listers tonight. We'll focus on Jaron and Puka and Gunner and Wilgar and Holker and Chris Brooks. You know, it's just been a build-up to where we've got 6 guys to look at. And then the guys will break down South Florida. I'm excited about Saturday with BYU Sports Nation Game Day, our new name. We got Jim McMahon. We'll sit down with Kalani. We'll sit down with Jaron Hall. You sat down with
Peyton Wilgar and
Tyler Batty. You'll be live over there in Florida.
Hopefully I can find some gators in a lake somewhere.
New Deep Blue.
I know where some are. A new Deep Blue, and it's 2 hours. It's like a Super Bowl every Saturday on BYUtv with our pre and post game shows. And now we're called Game Day, which is good because there's this other show that's called Game Day that will just borrow all their millions of people. Now we have 2 game days. 2 game days are better than 1 game day. I think we all would go with that.
Search Game Day.
But it's what we've been counting down. It used to be counting down to kickoff. It's what we've been counting down is this Saturday when we go on and we toss live dew at a stadium. And the long 9 months will be over. And it might still be raining as it did at UAB. Sorry about that. But it's just you and weather.
Continuation. Thankfully, it won't be 45 degrees and raining in Shreveport. It will be, 90 degrees in
But unlike that
South
game,
Florida.
Our quarterback will be behind the center.
Indeed.
The starters will be in the game. And optimism, again, of course, is sky high.
Dave McCann, great to have you on
4
BYU
days.
Sports Nation, El Capitan of After Further Review. We look forward to the broadcast tonight. And certainly, as you said, it's game week. Couldn't be more excited.
You know what? During the show tonight, at some point, Nixon and Fowler, one of them is going to say, "Who's the captain now?" as they take over the show. That's going to happen. We've seen that movie. We know how it ends.
That will happen.
All right, see you guys.
Okay,